Welcome to African Folktales by Mazi. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell us where you are watching from at the comments section. Then listen carefully, cause today I will take you to a village called Nambara. Hidden between thick forests and winding rivers that carried secrets the villagers dared not speak. This was no ordinary village. At first glance, it seemed peaceful: red clay huts, narrow dusty paths, and children laughing as they ran barefoot through the streets. Smoke curled from cooking fires, and elders sat under the great iroko tree, sharing stories of times long past. But Nambara held a secret. Its people trusted bells more than the wisdom of their elders, and pride more than caution. One evening, as the sun set in molten gold, the oldest woman, Nkala, hobbled to the village square. Her back bent like a crescent moon, her hair white as river foam, her eyes sharp as a hawk's. She lifted a gnarled hand and shouted, "Do not ring the bell again. If the rope is pulled tonight, you will call what sleeps beyond the forest. You will summon what cannot be sent away, and no shield, no prayer, no strength will save you." The villagers laughed. Children mocked her voice. Even Chief Bako, proud and tall as the bell tower, shook his head. "Step aside, old woman," he bellowed. "We fear nothing. The past is shadow, and shadows cannot harm us." Nkala's eyes narrowed, glowing with knowledge the villagers could not see. "You will see the river run red. You will hear screams carried on the wind. Pride opens doors no mortal should touch," she said, but the rope was pulled anyway. The bell shrieked like a living creature, echoing into the forest. Far beyond Nambara, deep where no human dared tread, something ancient stirred, patient, hungry, and waiting for the arrogance of the villagers to awaken it. That night, the village felt a stillness heavier than sleep. Even the river seemed to pause. Birds stayed in their nests, leaves hung motionless, and children huddled in fear under their mats. Mothers whispered prayers, fathers checked locks again and again, but no one dared admit that fear had taken root. Suddenly, a scream ripped through the village. It was Leni, a small quiet girl, missing from her mat. Her mother ran from hut to hut, calling her name, but no footprints marked the ground. Panic spread like fire. Some whispered that the bell had angered spirits, while others blamed Nkala, claiming she had cursed them with her warnings. Chief Bako refused to listen. "This is nonsense," he shouted. Guards were sent to watch Nkala, who simply murmured, "This is only the beginning. The first loss is never the worst." Meanwhile, the forest seemed to creep closer, shadows stretching unnaturally toward the village. Nambara had awakened something, and none would see it coming. Why dawn? Crops were wilting, goats disappeared, and whispers of fear spread like smoke through the streets. The villagers' anxiety needed faces, and they found them in Nkala and a young girl named Sira. Sira was quiet, but she could hear whispers carried by the wind. Noticed the forest shifting, the river restless, the shadows bending strangely. "They speak to spirits," one villager muttered. "They bring bad dreams," another added. Chief Bako called the village to the square. "Those who invite darkness will be punished," he roared. The people murmured agreement, relieved to find someone to blame. Nkala crouched beside Sira. "Listen, child. Truth survives storms, even when hearts tremble," she whispered. But fear had already begun to settle into every corner of Nambara. Questioning began immediately. Elders demanded answers, voices quivering. Sira spoke plainly. "The bell is dangerous. Stop calling through it. You cannot summon what sleeps beyond our world without paying a terrible price." Bako's pride flared. "A child will not teach us," he roared. That night, guards dragged Nkala to the square. "Confess your lies," they shouted. Nkala raised her head, eyes steady. "I speak only truth. Punish truth, and you will suffer what cannot be seen, ignored." She was locked in a small cell at the village's edge. By dawn, the river had risen without rain. Water swallowed fields, cracked clay walls, and crept toward homes. Panic spread as villagers clutched their children. "Ring the bell! Ring the bell!" they shouted, thinking the sound might protect them. Nkala cried from her cell, "No! Stop! You do not know what you summon." But the rope was pulled again. The bell shrieked like a beast in pain. Water rose higher, swallowing paths, farms, and houses. Children clung to mothers, mothers to nothing. Desperation covered Nambara like a wet, heavy blanket. Pride and stubbornness had summoned disaster, and now fear hung over every heart. By mid-morning, Nambara was unrecognizable. The river had crept into the streets, swallowing paths, gardens, and the edge of the square. Children clung to their mothers, goats had vanished entirely, and even the elders whispered prayers under their breath. Fear had replaced laughter, and the once bustling village was now a place of trembling shadows. Chief Bako, his pride battered by panic, summoned his strongest men. "Find the source of this madness," he ordered, slamming a fist against the bell tower. "We will not be ruled by ghosts or old women." But Nkala, locked in her tiny cell at the edge of the village, laughed softly to herself. Her voice was like dry leaves rattling in the wind. "You do not understand," she murmured. "Pride invites ruin, and Nambara will learn this tonight." A small girl, Sira, stood near the rising waters. She could see strange shapes moving in the forest beyond the village, shadows that bent unnaturally, and eyes that glowed faintly in the half-light. She knew that these were not animals, not humans, but something older, something patient and angry. When she tried to warn the villagers, they turned away. "Children's imagination," someone muttered. Another scoffed, "She only wants attention." But Sira would not leave. She ran to the riverbank, holding her small hands over her mouth to stop herself from screaming. The water shimmered, reflecting something darker than the night sky. And then she saw it, a figure, tall and silent, emerging from the forest. Its movements were slow, deliberate, and terrifying. The villagers, still blind to the danger, continued arguing among themselves, debating who to blame. Sira ran to Nkala's cell. "The thing. It has come," she whispered, her small voice trembling. Nkala's eyes narrowed. "Yes," she said quietly. "And you, child, must be ready, for only the brave can face what Nambara has awakened." The villagers gathered near the square, trying to understand the flood and the forest's strange behavior. Crops had been ruined, homes damaged, and livestock gone. Panic simmered, yet Chief Bako stood tall, attempting to appear in control. "This is mischief, nothing more," he said, though his voice wavered, but shadows moved in unnatural patterns at the forest's edge. Trees swayed though no wind blew, and strange cries echoed across the water. Mothers clutched children, while men grabbed spears and sticks, trembling with fear. Sira, guided by Nkala's whispered instructions, moved through the crowd. She could sense the forest breathing, the river whispering secrets of what had been awakened by the bell. "They are coming for the village," she said softly. "We must act before it is too late." "Acta," someone sneered. "We are Nambara. No child tells us what to do." Nkala's voice carried over the crowd, cold and firm. "The forest and river heed no pride. Only the pure and brave can survive. Listen, or perish." The villagers ignored her. But Sira had already made a decision. She ran to the river, where the water swirled strangely, glowing faintly under the dawn. A shadow rose from the depths, taller than any man, moving toward the village. Panic erupted, and the people screamed, finally realizing the warning they had scorned. Night fell like a heavy curtain over Nambara, and the village became a place of trembling lights and terrified whispers. Fires glowed dimly in the huts, and shadows stretched across walls, moving as if alive. The river rumbled as if it held its own anger, and the forest creaked and moaned. Sira, standing beside Nkala, could feel the forest pressing closer. The shadow she had seen during the day moved silently between trees, eyes gleaming faintly. "They are many," she whispered, "and they do not forgive." Chief Bako paced the square, attempting to maintain control, but even he could feel the weight of fear pressing down. Men sharpened knives, women clutched their children, and the elders muttered prayers they had never said before. Suddenly, a scream echoed from the edge of the forest. Goats scattered in terror, and the shadow moved closer, tall, silent, unstoppable. Some villagers fainted. Others tried to fight the unseen enemy, but their weapons were useless against something that was not flesh and blood. Nkala turned to Sira. "You must lead them," she said. "You must show courage where they have none. Only the brave child can survive what they have summoned." Sira's small hands trembled, but she nodded. She knew the village would not survive unless someone faced the darkness, someone who believed in Nkala's warning. She could feel the forest closing in, the river rising, the bell's echo still ringing in her ears. By midnight, chaos had taken hold. Houses were partially submerged, livestock were lost, and the villagers were trapped between the rising river and the advancing forest. Strange whispers echoed from the trees, carrying the voices of creatures no human had seen. Panic ruled every mind. Chief Bako finally looked to Mkala for guidance, but she only smiled faintly, her eyes gleaming with knowledge he could not understand. "It is too late for pride," she said. "It is time for truth, courage, and purity." Sira took a deep breath, standing at the river's edge. The water churned unnaturally, shadows twisting inside it. She raised her small arms and called to the forest. Her voice was clear and strong, and the shadows paused, listening. For the first time, the villagers noticed that she had not screamed, that she had not run. She was different, brave, unafraid, connected to something older than themselves. Some began to murmur, "The child. She may be our only hope." The shadows moved closer, their eyes glowing in the darkness. The villagers trembled, ready to flee, but Sira stepped forward, small but resolute. Mkala whispered, "Stand firm, child. Do not fear. You carry the courage of generations." Sira's voice rose, chanting words she had never learned, but somehow knew. Old words from the river, the trees, and the wind. The forest seemed to hesitate, the river paused, and the shadows slowed. The villagers watched in awe, realizing for the first time that their pride had brought them here. But courage, pure, fearless courage, might save them. Chief Bako sank to his knees, understanding his failure. The villagers whispered apologies to Mkala and Sira, hoping it was not too late. But the shadows were patient, watching every move, waiting for weakness, waiting for fear. And in the distance, the bell's echo still trembled in the night air, reminding all that some warnings are older and wiser than any man. And some mistakes take generations to undo. Dawn broke over Nambara, but the village was no longer recognizable. The river had swallowed entire fields, and mudhouses leaned like old trees, weakened by the flood. Shadows from the forest crept closer with every passing hour, moving silently among the standing water and broken paths. Mothers held children tightly, fathers grasped spears and sticks, but fear had drained strength from every limb. Sira stood near the riverbank, small yet unyielding. Her eyes scanned the water, watching it shimmer unnaturally under the rising sun. Mkala crouched beside her, whispering, "Do not falter, child. The brave must step where the fearful cannot." Chief Bako approached, his pride shattered, kneeling as he tried to understand what had been unleashed. "Old woman, tell me what to do," he pleaded. Mkala's eyes did not soften. "It is not I who will save the village, Bako, it is she. Only the pure and courageous may stand against what you have awakened." From the forest, the shadows emerged. Not one, but many twisted, towering figures, darker than the night, eyes glowing with anger and hunger. The villagers froze, unable to move or speak. Some whispered apologies, some began to cry, others prayed silently. Sira stepped forward. She could feel the rhythm of the forest, the pulse of the river, the ancient words that had once been carried in stories whispered to children long ago. Taking a deep breath, she raised her small arms and spoke clearly, words flowing as if they had always belonged to her. "Go back. You have no power here. Leave the village in peace." The shadows paused. The wind held its breath. Even the river seemed to hesitate. For the first time, the villagers saw something they had never seen before. Courage can bend even the darkest forces, if wielded with truth and purity. Despite the pause, the shadows did not retreat. They moved closer, silent and patient. Some villagers screamed, running toward broken huts and rising waters. Others froze entirely, unable to believe the terror before them was real. Nkala placed a hand on Sira's shoulder. "The first test has come," she said. "You must remain strong. They seek fear. If they sense it, they will take everything." Sira nodded. Her heart raced. But she remembered the stories Mkala had whispered in the night, stories of bravery, of children who faced darkness and survived, of elders whose words had been ignored at their peril. She stepped forward again, chanting the ancient words louder. The shadows recoiled slightly, as if stung by invisible fire. Water splashed unnaturally around their feet, and the forest seemed to whisper in warning. The villagers whispered among themselves in awe. "The child. She is powerful," one muttered. Even Chief Bako's pride began to crumble fully. He realized that years of stubbornness and disbelief had almost destroyed Nambara. He sank to the ground, covering his face, whispering apologies to Mkala, Sira, and the spirits he had ignored. The first night of confrontation had begun. But both Sira and the villagers understood this. The true test was not over. The shadows would return, stronger, hungrier, and cleverer. Only courage, truth, and wisdom could keep them alive. By noon, the sun had climbed high, but the shadows lurked at the edge of the forest, watching the village carefully. Crops were ruined, paths broken, and mud houses threatened to collapse entirely. Villagers moved cautiously, checking on families and trying to repair the damage. But every sound, the creak of a branch, the splash of water made hearts pound with terror. Sira walked among them, her small hands raised to calm mothers and children. "Do not run," she said softly. "Fear will only help them. Stand firm. Trust in what you know is right." A few villagers listened. Others shook their heads, still too frightened to believe that a child could protect them. The forest whispered and shifted, the river surged slightly, but the shadows waited, silent and patient, aware the time was on their side. Kala crouched near Sira again. "You are ready for the next challenge," she said. "They will test your courage, your heart, and your mind. Remember, child, true bravery is not the absence of fear, but the will to face it." Sira swallowed hard, her chest tight with fear. Yet, deep inside, she felt a growing strength. She was small, yes, but she carried the courage of every generation who had warned the villagers of arrogance and pride. Even Chief Bako, humbled by the night's events, began to whisper to those around him, "Listen to the girl. She may be our only hope." The shadows stirred again, closer now, preparing to test Nambara in ways the villagers could not yet understand. And Sira, though small and trembling, raised her head and stood her ground, ready to face the darkness that had been unleashed by pride and ignorance. Evening fell slowly over the village, painting the mud huts red and gold. The air smelled of wet earth and fear, thick and heavy. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the village paths. Children huddled with mothers, goats bleated in terror, and fathers tried to appear strong, though their hands shook. Sira and Kala walked quietly through the square. "The first test is passed, but the true danger is coming," Kala whispered. "They will try to divide the village, to make fear grow inside hearts where courage should dwell." Sira nodded. She could feel the shadows moving closer, whispering in voices no human could understand. "We must prepare," she said softly. "They will test everyone." The villagers began to notice her bravery. Small acts steadying a child, guiding an elder, calming a frightened mother began to inspire hope. Slowly, courage spread like a flickering flame. Some villagers still quivered, but others stood straighter, realizing that fear could be resisted if they followed Sira's lead. From the forest, the shadows watched silently, calculating, knowing that only unity and courage could stop them. The night would soon fall again, and with it, the next challenge, a test of the village's heart. Not just the child's. By nightfall, the shadows advanced, tall and silent, with eyes that glowed faintly in the darkness. The river rose further, spilling into broken pathways. Panic began to ripple through the villagers. Some ran blindly, some froze entirely. Sira stepped forward, small but unwavering. Her voice carried through the square, clear and firm. "Do not fear. Stand together." For the first time, the villagers saw a flicker of hope. They began to move in unison, helping one another, holding hands, steadying the terrified. Even Chief Bako, humbled and shaken, joined them, realizing that leadership was more than pride, it was courage. Kala watched quietly, her eyes gleaming. "They are learning," she whispered. "Courage is contagious, but only if hearts are pure and minds are willing." The shadows hesitated. The night was filled with tension, the air thick with expectation. Every heartbeat in the village seemed to echo, as if the world itself was waiting to see who would prevail. And Sira, the small child with the courage of generations, stood ready to lead Nambara through the darkness that pride had invited. The next morning, the village of Nambara lay battered and trembling. Mud paths were flooded, crops destroyed, and broken huts leaned like fallen trees. The shadows lingered at the forest edge, silent and patient, watching the villagers with eyes that glowed faintly in the morning sun. Sira stood near the riverbank, her small frame determined, despite exhaustion. Kala crouched beside her, whispering, "They are testing more than courage now. They will prey on fear, suspicion, and pride. You must guide the village through the darkness." Chief Bako, humbled but still proud, approached. "Child," he said slowly, "I see now. I was blind. I ignored wisdom for pride. Teach us what to do." Sira nodded, her chest rising with the weight of responsibility. The villagers gathered, fearful and hesitant. "Listen to her," Kala urged. She is the one who stands between you and the disaster you have awakened. Suddenly, a shadow slithered from the forest edge. It moved closer, tall, twisting unnaturally, eyes glowing with hunger. Panic swept the villagers, but Sira held out her hands. "Do not run," she shouted. "Stand together." Some villagers obeyed, holding each other tightly. Others froze in terror. The shadow stomped, almost sensing their fear. Sira began chanting the ancient words again, her voice steady, strong, and pure. The river churned, rising slightly as if responding to her courage. The shadow recoiled, hissing like a living storm. For the first time, the villagers saw a glimpse of hope. Courage had power, and fear had limits. Nkala smiled faintly, her eyes shining. "They are learning," she whispered. "But the true trial is yet to come. Tonight, darkness will not test only the child, it will test the hearts of all. By midday, the villagers were exhausted. Crops were gone, livestock missing, and homes damaged. Fear lingered, but Sira walked among them, small hands steadying trembling mothers and guiding frightened children. Her bravery inspired courage, little by little. Like a candle lighting a dark room, the shadows moved closer, merging with the forest edge, testing the villagers' resolve. Every rustle of leaves, every ripple in the river, made hearts pound. Even Chief Bako, once proud and fearless, trembled as he watched the unnatural shapes. Nkala spoke quietly to Sira. "They will try to divide the village, child. Some will panic, some will betray trust. Only those who listen to their hearts and act with courage will survive." Sira nodded, understanding the weight of her role. She gathered the villagers, teaching them to hold hands, stay calm, and trust each other. Slowly, the tide of fear began to shift. Courage, she realized, was contagious. The shadows hesitated. The water lapped against the riverbank unnaturally, and the wind carried low whispers, voices that no human had ever heard. Sira stood firm, eyes bright, and the villagers began to follow her lead. Chief Bako, humbled and shaken, whispered to those around him, "Trust the child. She may be our only hope." Night fell heavy over Nambara. The river surged higher, spilling into the village, carrying debris and fear. Shadows twisted between trees, moving like smoke, creeping closer to the trembling homes. Mothers clutched children, fathers gripped spears uselessly, and panic spread like wildfire. Sira stood at the river's edge, small but unyielding. She could feel the rhythm of the forest, the pulse of the river, the whispers of old words carried in the wind. "They are testing us," she whispered. "We must be brave." Some villagers faltered, but others began to act. They held hands, steadied children, and calmed each other's fears. Slowly, the unity began to repel the shadows. Sira's courage inspired them, lighting a spark of hope in hearts previously frozen by fear. Nkala watched quietly, her eyes glimmering. "Courage is contagious," she murmured. "But only if hearts are pure." Suddenly, a massive shadow rose from the forest, taller than any man, eyes blazing like embers. The villagers froze. Children screamed. Even Chief Bako's knees buckled. Sira stepped forward. "We do not fear you," she shouted. Her voice rang over the river, strong and unwavering. The shadow paused, swayed, and recoiled. The villagers followed her lead, holding hands, chanting courage alongside her. The river churned violently, responding to Sira's bravery. Shadows wavered, their forms twisting as if fighting an unseen force. The village held its ground. Nkala's voice carried over the square. "Stand firm. Courage and unity can drive darkness away." The shadows hissed but did not advance. For the first time, the villagers saw that fear had limits, and courage had power. By midnight, the village had survived its first full night of terror. The shadows lingered at the forest edge, but the villagers, guided by Sira and Nkala, had held firm. Children slept safely in their mothers' arms. Mothers, fathers, and elders realized that pride and stubbornness had nearly destroyed them. But courage and unity had saved them. Sira stood quietly in the square, small but unbroken, her eyes bright in the moonlight. Nkala placed a hand on her shoulder. "The night is over, but the trial is not," she said. "They will return. Darkness never forgets. But now you have shown them that courage can stand where fear once ruled." Chief Bako fell to his knees, bowing before Sira. "Child, you have saved us," he whispered. "I have learned that pride blinds even the strongest heart. Teach us to be brave, to be wise, to listen to the truth." And so, for the first time in generations, Nambara knew hope. But deep in the forest, the shadows waited, patient and cunning, knowing that the next test would demand even greater courage and a village that could truly listen. As dawn approached, the forest grew unnaturally quiet. No birds sang, no insects hummed. Even the river slowed, as if holding its breath. Mkala knew this silence well. It was the pause before judgment. She called the villagers together beneath the broken Iroko tree. Her voice, though aged, carried weight. "What you face now is not just a spirit," she said. "It is the hunger born from pride. Long ago, our ancestors rang the bell to call help. Over time, pride twisted its meaning. You rang it to command, not to ask. That is why darkness answered." Sira listened closely. "How do we stop it?" she asked. Nkala's eyes softened. "The bell must be silenced forever, but not with force. Only sacrifice, truth, and unity can close what pride opened." The villagers shifted uneasily. Some looked away. Sacrifice was a word they feared. That afternoon, the shadows returned stronger than before. They moved opally now, stretching into the village, tearing roofs, knocking over huts. Panic erupted. A man tried to flee and vanished into the darkness. Screams echoed. Sira ran to the bell tower. "We must face it together," she cried. Chief Bako followed, his voice breaking. "I rang the bell for glory. Let the punishment fall on me." But Nkala shook her head. "No, one heart cannot undo the pride of many." The ground trembled. The greatest shadow rose, towering above the village, fed by every moment Nambara had ignored wisdom. The final test had begun. The great shadow spoke without a mouth, its voice echoing inside every mind. "You called me. You fed me. You feared me. Now I claim what is owed." Children cried. Elders fell to their knees. Even warriors dropped their spears. The shadow reached toward the bell, its form pulsing with dark hunger. Sira stepped forward alone. "We were wrong," she said clearly. "We chose pride over wisdom. But we choose differently now." The shadow laughed, a sound like cracking trees. "Words mean nothing." Nkala raised her staff. "Then hear truth," she said. "This child listened when others mocked. She stood when others ran. If you must take the lie that feeds you, take our pride." Chief Bako stood beside Sira. Slowly, he removed his chief's beads and placed them on the ground. One by one, the villagers followed. Jewelry, titles, weapon symbols of pride fell into the dirt. The shadow recoiled slightly. Sira climbed the bell tower. Her hands trembled as she wrapped the rope around the beam. "No more calling," she whispered. She began to sing, not loudly, but with a steady voice. It was an old song, one Kala had taught her, a song of humility and listening. The bell cracked. A deep split the metal. The shadow screamed as the forest shook. The sky darkened as if night had returned early. Wind roared through Nambara, tearing at clothes and huts. The shadow twisted violently, shrinking, stretching, fighting against the pull of the broken bell. Sira kept singing, tears streaming down her face. Her voice wavered but did not stop. Nkala collapsed to her knees, exhausted. "Do not stop, child," she whispered. "This is the last door." The villagers joined the song, soft at first, then stronger. Their voices blended, imperfect but united. Fear loosened its grip. With a final thunderous crack, the bell shattered completely, falling into the dirt. The sound echoed once, then silence. The shadow shrieked and was pulled backward, dragged into the forest as if swallowed by the earth itself. Trees bent inward. The river surged, then settled. Suddenly, everything stopped. Light broke through the clouds. Birds sang. The forest retreated. Sira collapsed, weak but alive. The villagers rushed to her side, crying with relief. Nkala smiled faintly. "It is done," she whispered. Days passed. The village slowly healed. Crops were replanted. Huts rebuilt. Laughter returned, softer but wiser. Nkala did not live to see the full recovery. She passed quietly beneath the Iroko tree, her face peaceful. The village buried her with honor, something they had never done before. Sira refused leadership titles. Instead, she taught children to listen to elders, to the land, to warnings carried by quiet voices. Chief Bako stepped down, choosing to serve instead of rule. "A leader who does not listen is already lost," he told the people. The bell tower remained empty, a silent reminder. No new bell was ever made. Years later, travelers would pass through Nambara and ask why there was no bell to call meetings or warnings. The elders would smile sadly and say, "We once had one. We rang it when we should have listened." And so, the story was passed down. If only the village had listened to the old woman, fear would never have come. That is why, even today, African elders say when wisdom speaks softly, lean closer. When pride shouts loudly, step back. For not all warnings come with thunder. Some come with a trembling voice you choose to ignore. Thank you for watching. May this story teach you to listen before it is too late.